everyone, and welcome to this next episode of the RICS Tech Partner. My name's Andrew Knight, and I work within the Profession Directorate of RICS. Our area looks at regulations, standards, and thought leadership. And my role particularly is to look at the whole impact of data and technology right across the built and natural environment. With over 130,000 members worldwide, our members work right across the property life cycle, all the way from land acquisition through development, construction, brokerage, valuation, operations, and end of life of property. And that property can be residential, commercial, infrastructure, alternatives like data centers, really a very, very wide, broad church of what our members do, where they do it, and indeed what part of the property life cycle they're involved in. So that's a very broad canvas for us in terms of the way data and technology is bringing increasing value to the sector. And today I'm talking to Kris Atkinson from Matterport. So Kris, welcome.
Hi Andrew, thank you for having me.
Pleasure. And I always start these conversations actually with, rather than the bits and bytes, a bit of kind of bringing it to life from a personal perspective, with a bit of background on your experience in this kind of technology sector, and indeed a bit of a potted history on Matterport in terms of how long they've been around and some major milestones for them. So Kris, tell us about yourself a bit and about Matterport.
Yeah, sure. So I'm actually trained as an architectural technician by trade.
Yeah.
Went to university here up in just outside of Newcastle, University of Northumbria, and I worked in practice using BIM and largely Revit for about 15 years.
Right.
Working on drawing packages for projects, as well as being involved quite heavily in family creation for manufacturers and that element of the industry. It then came to a point where I wanted a slightly left step, I suppose, and that's where I kind of got involved with reality capture.
Yeah.
I've always been quite a techie person, and I like get my hands on the toys and kind of have a play with these things. So reality capture and kind of high-end laser scanning was just the job for that. So I really got invested and started to learn about reality capture in all its various forms as we went through, and that kind of led my path towards Matterport. So I've been here at Matterport for only a short period at this time, so I'm still one of the new guys here.
Right.
About 3 months I've been in, but we are a large globally recognized company. We were founded in 2011 with over 300,000 plus customers globally, and we are getting on average 1 billion plus viewings yearly on our website. So people dropping into Matterport spaces and essentially looking at the real world in a digital format.
Yeah. Now, and I suppose I'm going to put my hand up here, Kris. I've known Matterport on and off for a long time now, and I'm probably falling into the trap of thinking of Matterport and just thinking of dolls' houses, walk through, particularly for perhaps residential brokerage and stuff like that. And I know there's a lot more to it than that. And obviously, from our members' perspective, this kind of visualization, capture of physical assets in this digital way is becoming increasingly important. So I'm really keen to hear about what sort of Matterport have been up to while I wasn't looking, if you get my drift,
Yeah.
and the kind of things that you're doing as an organization beyond that. And the dolls' houses are great, but that's very much where mine's a bit stuck about what Matterport's bringing value to the sector on.
Yeah, of course, and I'd like to share a little video with you if that's all right.
Surely. Yeah, of
During this
course.
time. Oops. Yeah, so there actually is a perception of Matterport, and rightly or wrongly, it's kind of where it fits into AEC and how
Yeah.
it can benefit us. So people are often very familiar with seeing the kind of tours that you're seeing on screen now, these virtual walkthroughs that are really high quality. It isn't just luxury mansions and yachts and all those kind of lovely things that
Yeah.
we see. It's more about the unique simplicity of the solution and where it can be used for all parts of the industry. So I guess that's kind of one of my roles here at Matterport is maybe to try and change this perception a little bit. I mean, we do have large-scale customers across all industries, from
Mm.
residential to retail, commercial, travel insurance, insurances, travel and hospitality, across the board. So we do feed a vast variety of markets. And again, I think that is largely because of how uniquely simple the Matterport solution is. You don't need to purchase a high-end camera to actually capture the space around you.
All right.
You can now do that with the phone in your pocket. I was getting the train back from London from a trade show this week yesterday. I took 3 minutes with my phone and I captured most of King's Cross in the main concourse. So the power that you actually have in your own pocket now is remarkable. It really is quite fantastic. But it's looking at the applications and what benefit we can get out of this solution in various parts of the industry, and including AEC. So the way I kind of like to structure it is I like to look at it as a kind of exactly that: AEC,
Mm.
architecture, engineering, construction, or even simpler, before, during, and after.
Right.
And I think the way that I like to work this is, typically for those at the before part of a project, it's about capturing existing environments, giving us that really detailed, high quality environment to walk around, not only for things like floor plans, but
Mm.
for things like design risk assessments. We can walk through a space like what you're seeing on the screen. We can start to tag that up with various defects and information about it. It just adds that real depth to the data that you're seeing,
Mm.
because you actually have the ability to walk around the environment. In the middle part of it, the construction, it's typically a construction site is a very difficult kind of environment to map and to regularly sustain, because it's changing on an hourly basis at most times. The premise of digital twin is really large at the moment, but I always have a question about digital twin, in that, is it actually possible on a working construction site? It's changing on an hourly basis. So unless you've got somebody there scanning and capturing that site in real time, 24 hours a day, then maybe the premise and the actual terminology of digital twin might not be completely acceptable for a working construction site. That's just my opinion, and I know
Mm.
there are
Mm.
lots of opinions along that. But it can be used for progress monitoring. So things like, a subcontractor comes in, they carry out all their works, and what you could use the Matterport space for, and what we found is that customers are using it to do virtual quality checking. So from any
Yeah.
location in the world, they can go around, they can see that the works are being completed as expected and meet their level of approval. It's also a great chance to actually milestone document these key parts throughout a project. So again, installing certain packages, making sure that you have a digital record that can be referred to at any point, just to kind of back up exactly what you've done, and show the premise that, yes, this was installed as expected and signed off.
So how are people sort of, sorry to interrupt, but Kris, but
That's
how are
okay.
people able to perhaps, you know, tag things? I'm thinking very much of the kind of the prosaic sharp end here, where you've talked about using a mobile phone, which is great, because most people will have one of those in their hands, and you've talked about that power of tagging objects, of comparing it perhaps to a BIM model. What sort of things are you kind of integrating with to kind of produce this? Because I presume you're kind of integrating with other kind of parts of the platform or other bits of the system, because people are thinking of Matterport as capturing the image, but clearly then there's these other pieces where you need to join the dots almost.
Exactly. So, the capture part is the first part of it. And as I said, because we've got various capture devices that can be supported, you can choose the right tool for you, the right
Yeah,
entry point into Matterport, whether it's your phone or something like the Pro 2
yeah.
sitting there behind me. But once that data is essentially uploaded to the Matterport cloud, that's where Matterport starts to add the magic to it. That's where we can use our AI to actually add depth to a
Right.
lot of the 2D imagery that our phones are taking. The camera that you see behind is actually an infrared camera, so that has a depth sensor on it. And the newer iPhones today have LiDAR on them, and
Yeah.
that is acting as a depth sensor. But for 360 cameras and for standard iPhones and Androids, those are just 2D images, and it's our AI, our Cortex engine, that is actually adding that depth to those images. So it's based off the 100,000 spaces that we already have inside Matterport, which is growing as we go through, and it's learning, it's adapting, it's improving every single time we
I
do
see.
it.
So the machine learning is effectively looking at a 2D image, but it's learned to extrapolate from that up with other images and say, well, actually, I can now apply some depth to that based on what I've seen from similar kind of images. So
Exactly, and it really is quite powerful, taking that 2D imagery and then actually getting a 3D space out of it. So when we deliver it, once it's been processed on the cloud, we deliver that project, that space to you. And that's where you see the nice virtual tour that you can walk
yeah.
around that people are familiar with. But you're completely right. It's then, how do we make benefit of that? How do we make use
Mm.
of that data? So in that environment, that's where you can go and add your tags. We call them matter tags.
Yeah.
Essentially, you add a tag to any element in the space. You can add additional information in terms of text or PDFs or drawings, videos, audio files, information that you will deem as important to pass along to the client.
So a classic kind of augmented reality type approach where you can effectively augment the visual side with any kind of asset specific information that you want.
Yeah, and we're actually doing that even further. We have a number of partners that use Matterport. They take the base solution and they take
Mm.
our SDK, our API, and they actually build their solutions on top of it. So we have a number that do virtual staging. So, for example, scanning a completely empty space, and they
Yeah.
can take that base space and put elements into that with real clarity and real visualization quality.
And how about, and I appreciate not everybody has, a formal BIM model of their assets, but presumably you've got the ability to integrate with Revit files and various BIM models to then lay those two things against. Because obviously one of the potential use cases is, have we built what the BIM model said we built, for example, and there you need that kind of integration.
Exactly. So it's about getting that information we have on your Matterport account on the cloud and getting it into your third-party design software so you can actually use it. So it's been a very busy time for Matterport and AEC in the last couple of weeks. We've actually released our Revit plugin, so you can connect your account directly to Revit. You can
Right.
pull your spaces directly into Revit to start doing your scan to BIM workflows, modeling over the top of the point cloud as people typically do, and using that point cloud as the template. But to take that one step further, we've also introduced a product called BIM file. So we understand that, and from my experience, scan to BIM is a painstaking workflow.
Mm.
You've got to know the software very well, and it takes a lot of time to model that over the top of it. And some can argue that's not the best use of people's time. So what Matterport have done with BIM file is we've given you the opportunity to access your space on the cloud, go to your add-ons section, and essentially order a Revit file. And what we'll do is we will generate that Revit file for you based on the square footage or the square meterage of the project. The cost will be based on that. We offer a LOD 200 model is typically what we're offering
Yeah.
as a base, because there's a lot of customization when it comes to BIM. People have different standards, different parameters, different layers that they want to model to. And if we open that up and kind of customize everybody, you will be there with it all day, So
Yeah.
it's kind of giving you the base layer to start building on top of it. So we're doing some formal launching and marketing in the next couple of weeks over that. And again, I think that'll be a real benefit for Matterport and for our customers.
Now, I know like last time I spoke to one of your colleagues, and it's quite a long time ago now, that there was certainly something he showed me around actually being able to use the visualization to do some measurements. Where are you with that kind of measurement piece where you've taken that scan and not only do you have the walkthrough and the link to BIM, but you can begin to kind of capture some actual floor plate measurements or even measurements of some of the objects and things like that?
Yeah, so in the actual cloud viewer where you would access your space, there is a measurement tool in there. You can literally click the measurement tool and click the two surfaces that you want to measure between, and it'll put a dimension in there for you. If you double click it, it'll even make it completely perpendicular for you. So that's really, really useful. But the question again comes down to the accuracy, and that's all fairly dependent on the capture device that you've
Yeah,
selected. As I said, that premise of choosing the right tool for the job, it hits home very much for me, because we kind of start at the kind of lower end with just a standard, smartphone. You
yep,
then start to move up the grade. So then there are 360 cameras that are supported by Matterport. The Pro 2 that has the LiDAR depth sensor, so that adds more accuracy to it. Sorry, the infrared sensor I meant for that one. But then we do support the Leica BLK, which is a LiDAR typical laser scanner, which again can add more accuracy to that. So in terms of measurement, it's all about what
yeah,
device is being used.
yeah,
If
yeah,
if you're looking for precision, you want a high-end laser scanner, and often a question of accuracy is often what I get asked about. In reality, if we look at a project and all the various pieces of it, all the various aspects of it, how much of that project do we need to be plus minus one
yeah,
millimeter accuracy to? It's a very, very small percentage of that. Use it for what it's intended for.
yeah.
And then on the other side, for the other 99% of the project, you don't need to use a very high-end laser scanner. You could use something that is more cost-effective, quicker to do, something like a Matterport solution.
Yeah. No, I suppose that the reason I often ask that question is obviously measurement is a key thing for so many applications, but also as you intimated, so many of our members aren't working in huge firms, and so it's about that kind of democratization of technology to make sure that it's available. And as you say, often for an assignment, you don't need that level of tolerance. If you're simply looking at measuring a floor plate to a reasonable sense of accuracy, you don't necessarily have to have that, as you say, that incredible high level of tolerance. And it's also making sure that there are entry levels, to use the jargon, for smaller practices where they want to make use of visualization, but that the assignment doesn't justify the hire or purchase of the high end equipment. So I suppose hopefully what you're trying to do is make it genuinely accessible for different kinds of assignments for every size of firm and every kind of surveyor.
Yeah, of course, and I guess it goes down to understanding the requirements of a project.
Mm.
If somebody asks you what are your accuracy requirements on a project, you know, the answer is often difficult, and I guess the assumption is that most people just go, well, as accurate as it can give us it, and
Yeah,
that's where kind of LiDAR, has fit the bill. But it's like, it's like trying to use a Lamborghini to go to the shops
yes,
in that kind of sense of it. So I think where Matterport are looking at it is exactly as you said. It's choosing the right tool for the job in terms of the capture device. So that could be, an architect with his phone in an environment, and he could scan it. He could get a 3D space that not only allows him to do a kind of a virtual design risk assessment of that space, but also it gives them the need to get away from that old school reporting and taking
yeah,
photographs and putting them in. It makes this information a lot more accessible and understandable, because if even if you haven't been to the space and you're walking around the tour and you look up and you see that there's a tag on there and an issue, you kind of start to familiarize yourself, even if it is in a digital environment.
yeah. And I suppose once again, because you're hosting the actual images on the cloud, once again there's that benefit of that kind of software as a service approach, where effectively if people are ending up capturing quite significant volumes, obviously they don't want to have to host that on their own systems, do they, in that way? So
Yeah, and the benefit again of it being on the cloud is it's accessible by anybody. You could be on your holiday on the beach, and if you've got your iPad with an internet connection, you can access the works that people are doing, the scans that people are
yeah,
taking right in front of you. So it really is about quickly capturing these environments, digitizing the real world around us, and making that information in a format that is accessible to everybody.
So where do you see the direction of travel? I mean, you're obviously there's a lot of activity at the moment in terms of the kind of applications you're working on. I mean, what sort of things are people using it for? Where are you got a sense of what the future might hold in terms of other applications in this AEC space?
Yeah, I think largely from speaking with people and kind of understanding where it's going, it's largely gonna. I think my impression of it in the future will be it'll be going down AI and automated routes, trying to
Mm.
automate a lot of the processes that we have. I mean, one that in particular is kind of object recognition in a digital space.
Yeah.
At the moment, when we have a laser scanner or we have photogrammetry, we're taking those images, we're capturing all those measurement points, but a point doesn't know what it is. It's just a point. It's just a position in XYZ coordinate. However, if we can start to teach AI to start learning that this is a door, this is a window, this is a steel beam,
Mm.
that's where the kind of automation of maybe point cloud to model at the click of a button, that's when it becomes possible, when we've got this form of technology to be able to do it. I know at Matterport, we look at the AI, we kind of improve and we go down this in terms of object recognition. So ideally in the future, this is where I think we will get to. It takes time to build these AIs and to get them to
Yeah.
learn things. There'll always be something else that the clients and the customers demand it to do, but it's a developing product, as with many on the market, and we will continue down that route.
And I suppose it's that kind of it's become the cliche now, that kind of data flywheel, that the more scans you have, the more data you have to train the models to do those things. And I know we've been talking to one of our tech partners who's using scans to help at a quite prosaic level help quote for cleaning buildings. And once again, it's about object recognition. How many screens, how many keyboards, how many mice can you see as you not the furry kind, but the keyboard, the IT kind. But it's that object recognition. How many phones are there? How many objects need to be cleaned? Because as you say, for these scans to have context, you do need to move towards that object recognition to say, well, actually, what are we seeing in that more structural form? How many doorways have we seen? How many doors? How many windows? How many settees? If it is something like cleaning or I suppose like an inventory almost, you could begin to think, well, you could almost do an inventory of a building in some respects. So
Yeah, I mean, a hospital would be a perfect example for that. Every space has specialized equipment.
mm,
It needs these elements installed before it can kind of be used. And at the moment, there are manual processes going on. People are taking pictures of the rooms essentially with a tick list and ticking them
mm.
off. As soon as we can teach the technology to start ticking them off for us, that really does benefit the time and the effort that we put into it.
And it's a slightly sort of not a bleak question, but clearly that there must be some concerns or things you need to manage around privacy and when you're taking scans. Have there been any kind of particular issues or ways of governance that you're dealing with those issues where you sometimes present potentially scanning public spaces, or they might be thinking of the brokerage side where there are pictures of things like that. Are there ways that the models can be or that the images can be um, protected in terms of sometimes having to fuzz things out
Yeah,
or work with that
yeah,
kind of stuff?
it's extremely important. Again, as I said, it's an example of kind of AI and where AI is at the minute. So as I said, I was getting the train back. I did a couple of scans of London King's Cross, and there was a lot
Yeah,
of people there who
yeah,
weren't aware of me
yes,
capturing and probably wouldn't have given me permission to do that. But one of the nice things is when you do upload a Matterport space, our AI does automatically detect faces and it
yeah,
blurs them out. But again, there will be other elements in these spaces. AI for faces is generally quite good. It can
yeah,
spot them and it can blur them out automatically. But for other kind of confidential data or where privacy might over,
yeah.
that's where we have a blur tool. So essentially,
All
you
right,
can
good. Yeah.
go in and you can just literally use a paintbrush to blur over any issues or any areas that you might deem to be private. And again, that's extremely important because there will always be bits of information that people aren't comfortable in sharing.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I've heard of instances on that kind of Dolls House brokerage side where family photos have ended up being too visible in terms of those kind of. And I appreciate that the facial recognition should blur those. But as you say, there are situations where, and I can think of a condition survey where you would walk through a house, and there might be things where you'd want to make sure that a particular piece is blurred for that kind of privacy and confidentiality. Because I suppose that the almost the danger of this is that these things are so good that they capture everything, and you need to kind of wind back sometimes in certain contexts to make sure you don't capture everything in its entire detail.
That's definitely the case. I mean, whilst the technology is largely line of sight, it's not kind of wall penetrating or anything like that, because
Yeah,
that's quite expensive. The things it sees, it doesn't miss, and that's why it's
yeah,
a benefit over kind of the more manual ways we used to do it with a tape measure, because you would always go with a tape measure and you would miss something.
yeah,
When you're using this kind of technology, it's capturing all the environment, all it sees in one quick go. So then you don't have that return travel to take the missing dimensions. You
yeah,
can log in, you can take that from the digital version of it.
yeah. Well, it's been fascinating to talk, and I suppose but the last area to perhaps highlight, and I know I was chatting to another tech partner earlier this week about it, and it was the context was almost kind of taking the plunge, trying these things out, and encouraging particularly our smaller firms to give this kind of technology a go, because as you said, because it's now available, it's available out on Android and iOS, so essentially people can try it out, can't they, and just have a go, to use the vernacular, Kris.
Exactly, and that's the main starting point. Some of the bits of kit in kind of the surveying industry can be extremely expensive.
Yeah,
And you have to kind of build up a business case and a purpose for what it's going to benefit you. But there's no better way to actually give it a go, get your hands on it. And as I said, one of the key selling points of Matterport is that it's uniquely simple. It is. I can't kind of explain how easy it is
yeah,
to do without actually asking you to do it yourself.
yeah.
But as you said, now that we've essentially turned the phones in our pockets into scanners, it really is quite powerful. So I would like to kind of give that information to
Yeah,
you guys.
that would be
So
great if you could leave it on as a kind of a have a go type, in
yeah.
the positive sense of the phrase. That would be great. But well, it's been great to talk to you, Kris. I've certainly learned a lot more. I have to confess I'd not really kept up to date with what Matterport and this whole kind of scanning industry was up to. And I think as we mentioned, there's just lots of things that people can start using this for, and ultimately just improving people's experience of dealing with physical assets, albeit in a slightly virtual world. So, well, thanks again, and I look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and it's been a pleasure to talk with you. Again, I'd just like to challenge anybody: download the phone, the on your app. Sorry, download that app on your phone, and give it a go.
Yeah,
There is a free account; it's free to use. Have a go with it, and if you've got any questions, you know where to contact us.
brilliant. Well, thanks again, and look forward to talking to you again, Kris.
Thanks, Andrew.